Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, February 26th, 2019, and today we're going to be looking at a 2020 presidential election prediction between Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, and President Donald Trump. So I have done an election prediction where I have made a discussion where I talked about Howard Schultz's impact on Democrats in the year 2020. However, I've never made a one-on-one matchup between Howard Schultz and Donald Trump, and I do think that could be pretty interesting. The Democratic Party obviously is not going to not run a candidate just because Howard Schultz is running. I mean, he's already announced that he's formed an exploratory committee, and I don't. Obviously, the Democratic Party is not going to give up their one shot at taking back the White House in 2020 just to let an independent run. The Democratic Party, though, could lose votes with Howard Schultz running. Howard Schultz is an independent who does lean a little bit to the left, and by a little bit, I mean he does align with many Democratic values, and that's something that really worries some Democrats and not so much others. Howard Schultz probably won't make it past halfway through without being encouraged to leave the race by other Democrats, ones that don't necessarily like the fact that Howard Schultz is running. I mean, Howard Schultz is a lifelong Democrat, now turned independent. He said that he would do anything to avoid a Donald Trump re-election, which may end up for him having to lose the race. A lot of people have taken his stance on this entire thing as egotistical, thinking that he could actually win as an independent candidate. We're going to see today if he can actually win, even if it is a one-on-one race between Howard Schultz and Donald Trump. So first of all, Howard Schultz isn't exactly a household name like Donald Trump was back in 2016. Howard Schultz, sure, he's known for being the CEO of Starbucks, but he wasn't as known as President Trump. So he's not going to have that on his side for number one. Obviously, if he is a top national candidate, then people will know his name. I mean, that's inevitable because he is running for the highest office. But Donald Trump still had that advantage going into the primary season, going into the election season, having people know his name. Yes, Hillary Clinton was a household name, but how many people in the West Coast knew Chris Christie? How many people I can't even remember his name, like Bobby Jindal from Louisiana. Donald Trump just entered that 2016 race in the Republican primary and then just skyrocketed up, and everyone thought it would dwindle down, considering that Hillary Clinton was an even more well-known name in the political sphere in America. Did not happen. But for Howard Schultz, he isn't exactly a quote-unquote household name. A lot of people, again, do know who he is, but not everyone. Donald Trump was pretty well known, especially being very outspoken against President Obama. Howard Schultz pretty much just popped in and popped out pretty quickly of the news cycle. But, so today we're going to go ahead and start by characterizing all of the safe Donald Trump states. I accidentally left it on the mode for the just candidate edits, but we know the same states are probably going to be safe states. We know how this election goes time and time again in the beginning. I mean, that's just how it is. A lot of people have commented, why are your electoral maps almost nearly the same? Don't ask me. Ask the American electorate. That's not up to me to make the decision. I mean, sure, I can throw Texas for Kirsten Gillibrand, but that won't necessarily be realistic, but variation, right? But going over the West Coast, sorry, we're not characterizing Democratic states. I don't know what got into me. But for right now, Donald Trump has 125 quote-unquote safe electoral votes as of right now. I do think some other ones are going to end up in there as we get there. But for right now, I would say that these are the 125 undoubtable Republican safe electoral votes. If, Kansas could narrow down, states like South Carolina, Mississippi could get less than 15%, but still above 14%. Those states may or may not narrow down. They're still safe Republican states. Even though they don't exactly make the cutoff. Number one, we're going against Howard Schultz, not Bernie Sanders here. And number two, we're looking at an election where this is just a stereotypical election. And Howard Schultz, again, he's no Bernie Sanders. He's no Joe Biden. He's not going to make a number of these states close. And that should foreshadow a little bit going into what we're going to see in the upcoming electoral maps. But for Howard Schultz, there are some states that I would characterize as safe for him. State of Maryland being one. Delaware, probably New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New York, Cali, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii. What's interesting is now an independent has officially pulled ahead of where the president is now at 159 electoral votes. Obviously not the biggest thing. Just something to know. Illinois I would characterize as a safe state for Howard Schultz. But, it's Illinois. It's obviously going to be safe for whatever candidate that isn't Donald Trump. That pretty much covers all of them. DC, I forgot to include. It puts the independents at 182, Donald Trump at 125. But for Donald Trump, if we're looking around the country, there are many areas that he won in back in 2016. All the states that Donald Trump won in 2016, just to put it into perspective, I'm going to characterize under the Democratic color just to show you. I mean, we have Arizona, Texas, and Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska 2nd, Maine 2nd District, and that's all of them. 181 electoral votes. So imagine this entire area, disregarding this 50, being completely red. And that's just based off states that he won in 2016 alone. There are some other swing states out. Here are states that Hillary Clinton won in 2016. We have Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Maine's first, Maine at large, and that's it. There's all the states Hillary Clinton won in 2016 that are left. So 50 electoral votes compared to 181, obviously. Donald Trump at this point should have the upper hand leading into more and more into this map. Texas, I would actually characterize as a safe state. Howard Schultz, I do not see getting pretty close in the state of Texas. The reason why I would see Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders doing it is, number one, they're vastly popular nationwide, and they also align with a party. That is something that America likes to see. An independent candidate doesn't win for a reason. And I get it. We've had this established two-party system for the longest time. But also people like having a sense of belonging, having an identity. Okay, a lot of American people do register themselves as independents, but also a lot of them register themselves as Democrat and Republican. And out of those independents, many of them either vote straight down Democrat or straight down Republican because they align with a certain party and they just don't want to admit it, or they just believe they're independent when in reality they're not. And independents, I get it. I mean, Bernie Sanders is quote unquote an independent. He's not now. Number one, if he wins the Democratic nomination, he will be labeled as a Democrat. Probably if his legacy goes well for the rest of the time that people remember him. Like 200 years from now, if you look back, he'd probably be characterized as a Democrat. I mean, if we look at previous presidents that switch party affiliations, we remember them as their most recent party affiliation or the one that they won the top official in. Newt Gingrich, nobody really refers to him as a long-lost Democrat. Barely anyone brings it up other than when we're talking about, 94 or Bill Clinton's era. That's pretty much the only time where you ever really consider or even understand that Newt Gingrich used to be a Democrat. And everyone knows him as a Republican. A number of other Republicans, like the senator in Alabama. Remember when that 2017 special election was coming up? He was the last Democrat elected there, and then he's now a Republican, switched over, and that's pretty interesting. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and keep continuing on to this map. For Donald Trump, I do think he's going to carry Georgia. It's probably going to be a likely state. I mean, it's still Georgia, still close. I do think it could go up to 10%. Another state that I think could be likely is Arizona. I think that one's going to go into the likely states for Donald Trump. But Howard Schultz, I do think is going to carry New Mexico narrowly, though. Actually, not narrowly, 6-7%. That's necessarily narrow for a couple of anti-Trump type candidates. And New Mexico, I think, could go into the Howard Schultz column narrowly. But for Colorado, I think that one's going to be even narrower. I do think Howard Schultz is going to narrowly win here. Donald Trump, number one, is vastly unpopular in a number of these states, more so in like the Rust Belt than in some other states. But the Rust Belt typically comes back during presidential elections. These states, I mean, they were pretty consistent in 2018. Yes, Democratic states, I mean, they did align with some of these. But again, look back to 2016 as well. Factor in 2014, factor in 2012, 2008, 2006. These states definitely hold a little bit more Democratic identity and holding on to the Democrats than the Rust Belt did compared to where it was in 2016, especially with some Senate elections, some House elections, things like that. But for Donald Trump, I do think he's going to also carry Ohio and Iowa by likely margins yet again. Those are states that he did pretty well in back in 2016, and there's no reason why he would lose now, especially going against a quote-unquote weaker candidate. Going up to the Northeast, though, I would say Howard Schultz carries the 1st district in the state of Maine. I do think that Donald Trump would carry Maine's 2nd district. Howard Schultz, I could narrowly see, very narrowly actually, putting that in the tilt column, carrying Maine at large, putting that one in the tilt column. So that's our first tilt for either side. Howard Schultz at 199 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 215. Donald Trump, I definitely think is going to carry Florida. I still think it's going to be a lean, but not necessarily a tilt. That's still good for the president. Puts him at 244. Another state, North Carolina. That one actually I could see going likely. It has gone likely against very powerful Democrats in the past. And Howard Schultz is not a Democrat, number one, but he's an independent in this scenario, so North Carolina still goes even more to Donald Trump. we're looking at other states. Virginia, I do think will narrowly go to Howard Schultz. I mean, the state still holds on to its identity as a Democratic state or just anti-Trump state, to be completely honest with you. New Hampshire, I think, is going to be a lean margin for Donald Trump. That's the first official flip from 2016. We include Pennsylvania in the lean margin, Michigan in the lean margin, and Wisconsin in the lean margin. And now, officially, Donald Trump has surpassed where he was back in 2016. Looking at this, I would actually characterize, Minnesota. It was very, very close in 2016. I'm going to put that one in the tote column for Donald Trump. Another state I'm going to put in the tote column is the state of Nevada. This is how I do think that the final electoral map is going to finish off. Donald Trump at 325 electoral votes, Howard Schultz at 212. When you're not assigned to a political party, it is very hard for you to win because you can't. Number one, you don't have that base starting off. Ross Perot was the last quote-unquote successful candidate, and he didn't even get a single electoral vote with 18 million votes. Sorry, 18% nationwide, or it was 18 million votes. 18 was just a big number. That's a very large number for any third-party candidate. Gary Johnson didn't even reach 10 back in 2016. I don't even think he reached 5% nationwide, but again, this is the final electoral map as it stands today. So if you have any questions, comment them down below. If you disagree or agree or disagree, you can comment that down below as well. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.